Parshat Bo. This week's Parsha is going to talk about the descent of the Jewish people to Egypt. So let's look at source number 1. Vayehi bechatzi halayla, it was in the middle of the night. Ve'Hashem hika kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. And God smote all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, mi bechor Paro hayoshev al kiso, from the firstborn of Paro that sits on his throne, ad bechor hashevi, until the slaves, till the captureds, asher beit Bo, that were in jail, vechol bechor behema, and also the animals, all the firstborn animals. Vayakam Paro laila, Paro woke up at night, hu v'chol avadav, him and his entire servants, v'chol Mitzrayim, the entire Egypt, v'ti tza'aka gdola Mitzrayim, a big shout in Egypt, ki en bait asher en shamet, because in every house there's dead people. Vayikra leMoshe ve'Aaron, and Paro called to Moshe and Aaron, Laila at night, vayomer kumu tz'u mitoch ami, and he told them, that's it, I had enough, get out of my nation. גם אתם, you, גם בני ישראל, the Jewish people, ולכו עבדו את השם כדברכם. I gave up. Go serve God, just like you told me. גם צונכם, גם קרכם קרחו. You can take your sheep, your cattle, because in the past he refused, now you can take the whole thing. כאשר דיברתם, like you spoke, ולכו, and go, וברכתם גם אותי, and bless also me, I'm the firstborn. Yeah, obviously there's a reason why he wasn't killed until now. Says, yeah, he says because he knows he's going to die soon. He's the firstborn. God left him alive to show him. ובירכתם גם אותי, and you bless also me. ויהי בעצם היום הזה, and it was in the middle of that day, יצאו כל צבאות אשר מארץ מצרים. All the Jewish people went out of the land of Egypt. In source number 2, this is from Exodus 1:1. Says, how does Exodus start? It starts with ve'ele shmot bnei Israel abei Mitzrayma. And these are the names of the Jewish people who come to Egypt. Et Yaakov ishu betoba, with Yaakov, men in his household came. And we have a rule in the Torah. The Torah never repeats. And if the Torah repeats, we have to ask a question, why does it repeat? And over here in Shmot, it is a repetition of what was already told us in Bereshit. Where do we see in Bereshit? In Bereshit it says, ve'ele shmot bnei Israel abei Mitzrayma. That's exactly the same words. These are the names of the Jewish people that come to Egypt. Yaakov, Ubanav and his sons. And then it enumerates them. So it's a little bit different. But the information we already have. We already know that Yaakov and his household are coming down to Egypt. So the question is going to be, why is it twice? Why do we need the information twice?
A rebirth. A rebirth? Like a rebirth?
No.
A repeat.
A repeat. Why does it repeat? Yeah, so we'll see. In source number 4, in Torah Or, this is a book by the Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe asked this question. The Alter Rebbe says on page number 2, ואלה שמות בני ישראל הבאים מצרימה את יעקב ושבטו באו. He asked the question on Exodus. It says, these are the names of the Jewish people that come to Egypt. Yaakov, men in his households. So the Torah asks, הנה בפרשת ויגש, we already had a few parshias away, נאמר גם כן, it already said, ואלה שמות בני ישראל הבאים מצרימה, יעקב ובניו. The Alter Rebbe asked the same question, why is it twice? וצריך להבין למה הוא הוכפל בתורה, עניין בו המצרימה. We need to understand why does it say in the Torah twice? The same concept. And then the Alter Rebbe gives an answer, and like the Alter Rebbe usually does give the answer, it's very, very short, and we're going to try to understand what he's trying to say. והעניין, the Alter Rebbe says, and the matter is, דהנה כתיב ירוד ירדנו. It says it's not the only time, if you notice. It also say we came down to Egypt. Yarod yaradnu. We came down. Twice. It says. ירידה אחר ירידה, which means there were two descents to Egypt. וכן ביציאת מצרים וגאולה כתיב, and also when they're going to go out of Egypt, it's going to say, ואנוכי אעלך גם עלו. It says, I'm going to elevate you, take you out, I'm also going to take you out. Again, twice. וכולו, and then it says, עלו נעלה. And it says, we're going to go up, we're going to go up. Again, twice. היינו, בית עליות שהוא עילוי אחר עילוי. So we have two descents and two ascents. Two descents to Egypt and two ascents away from going out of Egypt. So we need to understand what are the two descents to Egypt and the two ascents from Egypt. So let's see. The Rebbe says, מבואר בתורת אור ובתורת חיים. It is explained in Torah Or and Torah's Chaim. The Torah's Chaim is a book by the Mittel Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe. And whatever the Alter Rebbe wrote in 2 words, the Mittel wrote in 20 pages. Yeah, every 2 words by the Alter Rebbe was an explanation of 20 pages by his son. שבגלות מצרים היו שתי ירידות. It says you should know, when they went into Egypt, there were 2 descents. שכתוב ירוד ירדנו. It says we went down twice. ומצד זה מוכח, and because when they went down twice, you have to say שגם בעלייה מגלות מצרים מוכרחים להיות שתי עליות. That also when they're going to go up, they have to go up twice. Because since they descended twice, they will have to go out twice. And it's written, ואנוכי אעלך גם עלו, like it is written, I'm going to take you up, I'm also going to take you up. העלייה הראשונה, when is the first עלייה? The first עלייה היינו כשיצאו ממצרים. That was the aliyah when they went out of Egypt. We all know the story. והעלייה השנייה, and when is going to be the second ascent? It didn't happen yet. The second ascent is going to be בגאולה העתידה כמבואר שם. When Mashiach is going to come. But besides that, so we need to understand what are the descents. And Yerida twice. And the Aliyah only once. And the second one is going to be when Mashiach is going to come. Okay. ומזה מובן.
We went twice. ירדנו twice.
That's right. We went twice, but we only went up once. ומזה מובן, from here we understand, שכל זמן שלא מגיעים מעלייה השנייה בגאולה העתידה, that until we're going to leave Egypt the right way, the second way, עדיין לא יצאנו ממצרים בשלמות. We're still in Egypt. In other words, we did not reach the land of Israel yet. We are not in the land of Israel until when? Until Mashiach comes. משום שבגלות מצרים הייתה ירידה כפולה, because when we descended from the land of Israel to Egypt, we descended twice. ולכן כל זמן שחסרה עלייה שנייה, and since we don't have the second elevation, it is as if we are still in Egypt. Page number 3. על פי זה יובן מה שכתוב. So now we're going to explain another verse. The verse says, כי ימי צאתך מארץ מצרים אראנו נפלאות. As in the days when you came out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. לכאורה יציאת מצרים הייתה ביום אחד בלבד. What do you mean the days you went out of Egypt? It was only one day. In one day we went out of Egypt. מדוע איפה כתוב כימי לשון רבים? Why does it say 2 days? Like many days we went out of Egypt. על פי הנ"ל, so now we're going to understand. כל זמן שחסרה עלייה שנייה, as long as we don't have the second elevation, זה עדיין נחשב שאנו במצרים. We are still in Egypt. לכן כתוב כימי לשון רבים. That's why it's written like the days in plural. לרמז שכל הימים עד הגאולה העתידה, to tell us that all the days until the redemption, עדיין ממשיכים לצאת ממצרים. We are in a process. We're going out of Egypt. עד הגאולה העתידה, until Mashiach is going to come. And that's going to be the end of going out of Egypt. Okay. Page number 4. We don't know where they are yet. We're going to discover soon. הביאור של שתי הירידות. So what is these 2 descents? Your question. מבואר בתור האור ובתורת חיים. So it explains what are these two descents on page number 4. כפי שהם ברוחניות. First we're going to explain them spiritually, and then we're going to see. ונבאר את עניינם בזמננו בכל יום. And also we're going to see that these two descents happens every day in our lives. It's not just a historical thing that happened then, just not a spiritual thing that happened then. It actually happens every day within our lives. בכללות, הירידה התבטאה בכך שיעקב ובניו עזבו את ארץ ישראל. So it says, what's the problem? What do you mean descend to Egypt? What's the difference? Egypt, America, Canada, Israel, all the same. It says, Yaakov ובניו עזבו את ארץ ישראל. When Yaakov and his sons left the land of Israel, what kind of land did they leave? ארץ אשר עיני הוויה אלוקיך בה. It's the land that the eyes of God מראשית השנה ועד אחרית השנה. From the beginning of the year until the end of the year. Unlike what? Unlike the land of Egypt. So first of all, we need to understand, what does it mean to descend from a land where God looks at the entire year to a land where God doesn't look? What do you mean? God doesn't look at Canada? God doesn't look at America? God is everywhere. He looks at everything. So what do you say God doesn't look? He only looks at Eretz Israel? He only looks at the Jewish land? So the question is, במה מתבטא שהנה הוויה אלוקיך בה? What does it mean that it is the eyes of God your Lord in it? בעובדה, it says, do you know what it means? שלמטר השמיים תשתה מים. It says the land of Israel is a land where you are going to drink water when the heavens open up. What does it mean? כאשר אדם חורש וזורע. You're going to the land of Israel, you're going to plow the land, you're going to seed the land, ועושה את כל מה שתלוי בו. You do exactly what is necessary for you to do. In the land of Israel, you don't know if it's going to grow. You know you need one more ingredient. It's not enough to go to work, to do your stuff. You need a third partner. Who do you need in the land of Israel? You need God. Without God to bring down the rain, it's not happening. You can plow, you can prepare, you can seed, you can do whatever you want. If God doesn't decide to bring down rain, all to waste. You need him. הוא עדיין לא בטוח שתהיה צמיחה. You're still not sure it's going to be growing. עליו להסתכל לעבר השמיים. He needs to look to the heavens ולבקש מהשם שירד גשם. And to ask from God, God, without you, nothing is going to grow. Without the rain, nothing is going to happen. למטר השמיים תשתה מים. This is what it means. You need God, you need the water to come down from heavens. הנהגה כזו שוללת את הטעות של, in other words, in the land of Israel, the farmer cannot think, I did it. He feels that without God, he's got nothing. He feels it. Because he can be a multi-billionaire, plow the entire land and seed the entire land. Without God, everything is wasted. He becomes a poor person tomorrow. That's what Israel means. He cannot say, כוחי ועוצם ידי עשה לי את החיל הזה. He doesn't have the feeling, I did it. It's me. I'm a big Popeye. משום שהוא רואה במוחש בעיני בשר, because he sees with his own fleshy eyes, שהוא לבדו אינו יכול לעשות כלום, that without God, nothing is going to happen. Page 5. But what happens when they reached Egypt? אך כאשר מגיעים לארץ מצרים, in the land of Egypt, it works completely different. שם הסדר שונה. Over there, nature is different. במצרים יש את הנילוס. In Egypt, they have the Nile River. שעל פי טבע הארץ, בטבעו של היאור, but by nature, אולי בתקופה מסוימת, in Egypt, it doesn't rain, by the way. There's no rain in Egypt. Egypt is a desert. But you know where it rains? There's monsoons in Ethiopia. And the monsoons in Ethiopia come down in the Nile during the summer. There's like 4 or 5 months. And the Nile overflows and it waters everything. Everything gets water. If you look at a picture of Egypt, you'll see that all, I'm talking about 99.9% of all cities are on the Nile. Because there's no rain in Egypt. The Nile is the sustenance.
That's why they have the best cotton there.
That's right.
A lot of water.
The Nile is everything. Without the Nile, there's nothing. But they rely on the Nile. They know that from this month to this month, even though it doesn't rain in Egypt, naturally we're going to have water. The water doesn't come from heaven. The water comes from the earth.
But it's all the same thing.
That's what you would think, right?
Nature is God.
That's what you would think, right?
Of course.
Yeah? You don't think this way.
I don't think this
No. And that's what we're going to be discussing.
only rain, I believe, is...
Yeah, that's exactly what we believe. And I'll show you soon how. And he's going to discuss how it is this way. ומשקה את השדות. זה נותן מקום לטעות. In other words, it brings an idea into a person's mind שכוחי ועוצם ידי עשה לי את החיל הזה. It's nature. As long as I know how to invest my money in the right place, in the right time, I'm smart enough, I know which market is up, which market is down, nature is going to be, I put my hard work, I'm going to get my money. I don't need God. שהכל מצד הטבע, everything seems to be natural in Egypt. וכך יכולים לשכוח על הקדוש ברוך הוא. And this is how we forget about God. אמנם האמת היא, the truth is, שהסיבה שהנילוס השקע את השדות, but look what happened. How come in the time of Egypt, the Nile overflowed and watered everything? It all became, היא בזכות ברכתו של יעקב. יעקב אבינו came to Egypt and he gave a blessing to Paro. That's right. That's right. שהנילוס יעלה לקראתו, that the Nile will come up towards him. That's a blessing that Yaakov gave Paro. שזוהי ברכת השם. It wasn't his blessing, it was God's blessing. It was a blessing that was given to the Jewish people. We see the same blessing happened with Eliezer, same blessing happened with Yaakov when he went, same blessing happened with Moshe, with the daughters. It's the same blessing that Jews have. And he gave that blessing over to Paro. אך במשך הזמן, he says, what happens? So what's the difference? It's a miracle. It says, yes. But the miracle, הרגל נעשה טבע. What's the difference between a miracle and nature? Nature, like you said, is also a miracle. But when the miracle happens every day, that's it. It becomes to be nature. In other words, do you have a doubt the sun is going to come up tomorrow?
No.
But it's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
But we don't have a doubt. Do you have a doubt when you put a seed in the ground that an apple tree is going to grow? No. But it's a miracle. When a new baby is born, do you have doubt that a new baby is born? No, if you do that, the new baby is born. No, it's a miracle. It's just such a miracle that is happening all the time that we take it for granted. That's the idea. ויכולים לשכוח שזו ברכת השם. In other words, we completely forget that this miracle comes from God. ולחשוב שזהו הטבע. And this is what the word טבע means. טבע means drowned, לטבוע. God is so drowned in it, you don't see it. Like somebody who's drowning in the sea, you don't see him. God is so drowned within nature that God cannot be seen. מלשון טבעו בארץ שעריה, שהאמת מכוסה, that the truth is hidden, God is completely consumed by the sea, וטובעת בהיעלם הטבע שמעלים עליו. The nature is hiding on the fact that God is behind it. We think it exists. This is nature. This is the laws of nature. And we're going to see this. This is your question. He's going to say, not only today we don't see it, God knew that even the generation that saw the miracles in Egypt, they even don't see it. Even the generation that left Egypt, they even don't see it. He says, how is it possible? ומי לנו גדול מדור המדבר. It says, let's look. Who is greater Then the generation of the desert, שהיו דור דעה, they were said they were all geniuses, מקבלי התורה, they received the Torah, שראו איך וירד השם על הר סיני, they saw God descend on Mount Sinai, שהשם ירד לתחתונים, ועשה מהתחתון דירה לו יתברך, they saw godliness come down to earth. ואף על פי כן שואל המדרש, nevertheless we see that God had a special deal when it came to them. The Midrash asks a question, why did God do it in such a way? מדוע המן היה צריך לרדת דבר יום ביומו? Why did God make the manna come down every day? Why it's not enough once a week, or once a month, or once a year, or once for every 40 years? Eat from it, it continues to grow. Why did they have to go and collect it every day? Everything else was miracles. והיו צריכים להגיע לריבוי ניסים כדי שהמן ירד בכל יום. And there's a rule. God doesn't do miracles when it's not necessary. In other words, if God can do the miracle once, he'll prefer to do it once and not every day once. God doesn't like to do miracles. הרי המן היה יכול לרדת בפעם אחת עבור כל 40 שנה. The manna could have came down one time and a miracle. It's all the time there for the entire 40 years. You don't need to bring it down every day. Why would God do such a miracle, break nature every day? So let's do source number 5. So source number 5 says, Rabbi Shimon says, מפני מה לא היה יורד בפעם אחת בשנה? If you don't want to bring it down once for 40 years, you can bring it down once a year. It says why? כדי שיהפכו את ליבם לאביהם שבשמיים. Because otherwise they wouldn't trust God. Even the generation that saw all the miracles in Egypt, even the generation that saw everything, they will still don't trust God and they will think it's nature. In other words, משל למה הדבר דומה, and he gives an analogy, למלך שגזר על בנו להיות מפרנסתו פעם אחת בשנה. It's a king that left to his son, he says, I'm going to give you $100,000 a year. Here, every year on the 1st of January, you get a check, $100,000. ולא היה מקביל פני אביו, אלא בשעת פרנסתו. So every 1st of January, the father will get a phone call in the morning, and the son will tell the father, hey, my bank account is empty, where's my $100,000? So every January 1st, the son will come to the father and will ask him, where's my money? The bank account is empty. פעם אחת חזר וגזר עליו להיות מפרנסו בכל יום. Until the father says, if I want to hear from my son, if I want him to recognize that the money comes from me, I have to start giving him it every day. He says, let's divide the 100,000 by 365, and then every day he will have to call me to get the money. In other words, because he doesn't recognize the entire year where the money is coming from. He thinks it's just nature. It just happens. The money is just there. No, every day. אמר הבן, so the son says, אפילו איני מקבל פני אבי לבשעת פרנסתי, די לי. So the son says, you know what? Now I recognize that every day I need to connect to my father in order to receive my sustenance. Otherwise we don't feel it. כך ישראל, so are the Jewish people. היו בביתו של אדם 5 זכרים או 5 נקבות, even in the time of the desert. You would have 5 daughters and 5 males. היה יושב ומצפה ואומר, see, in the end of the day, today he ate, but tomorrow there's nothing for tomorrow. He can't even save it. If he saved the manna for tomorrow, it would not be there. In other words, he knows that without God, tomorrow, he cannot eat, he will die. But if God will give him from the entire year, he doesn't need God anymore, in his mind. Even though it is the same thing, God gave him the manna the first time. It doesn't matter, he gets used to the idea and he thinks it's nature now. I don't need God anymore. That was your question.
Like the rain.
Like the rain? That's right. ואומר שמה לא ירד המן למחר. It says, logically I know God is going to give it, but I don't see it. And deep down in the subconscious, you're waiting. Maybe tomorrow I'm not going to get the miracle. Maybe it's not going to come down tomorrow. ונמצאנו מתים ברעב, and then we're going to die in the desert. יהי רצון לפניך, then the person will every day approach God with the concept. He says, God, please, ירד, please make it rain, mana. ונמצא הופכים את ליבם לשמיים. And that's why how we turn our hearts to God in heaven.
Reminder that every day is a miracle and that we should just appreciate every day and not take each day for granted.
We're going to see soon. We're going to exactly that's where the discussion. That's the descent going to be soon. והביאור בזהו. So the explanation in this is follows. אם המן יורד בפעם אחת, if the manna would come down at one time, במשך הזמן היו שוכחים שהוא הולך מן השמיים. After a couple of weeks, you would forget that this is God who's giving it to you. משום שיש להם לחם מן המוכן בקופסה, because look, it's here. Like the Nile, it's always here. That's right, that's nature. That's right. העובדה שראו זאת אתמול, the fact that they saw this 2 weeks ago, or yesterday, לא דומה למה שרואים היום. It's not the same as if you see it come down every day. ומכל שכן כשעוברות שנים רבות, and for sure when 20 years go by, you're sure it's going to be here tomorrow. I don't need God, it's here, it's always here. What do I need God for? ואם זה כך אפילו אצל דור דעה, and this is the generation, which generation? Not our generation. It's the generation of the desert. מכל שכן שזה כך באדם רגיל. How much more so it is in a regular person. שההרגל נעשה טבע. Because once it's there every day, you call it nature. ושוכחים על האמת. You're going to forget that nature is God. That's what people do, whether you like it or you don't. You know, every person realizes, you know, don't worry. You take a seed, you put it in the ground, you water it, and it will grow. Why? Because that's what he does. No, it's a miracle that it grows. We just get used to it. It's a miracle that it grows just like the manna come down from heavens. But we look at it, no, it's nature. That's what we do. And now we're going to see that in Egypt, they had 2 descents. They had 2 going down to Egypt. Page 7. ובזה גופה ישנם שני ירידות. In this in itself, there are 2 descents. הירידה של פרשת ויגש. One descent was in the book of Bereshit, in פרשת ויגש, בחיי יעקב והשבטים. This was the life of Yaakov and the tribes. והירידה של פרשת שמות. And one was in the beginning of פרשת שמות. לאחר מיתתם, after the entire generation passed away. It says, how do we see this? כל זמן שיעקב חי, as long as Yaakov was alive, ההיעלם וההסתר עדיין לא היה גדול כל כך. Everybody realized that nature is God. Not as much as in Israel, but they did realize that nature is God. Why? משום שהיו יכולים ללכת ולשאול אצל יעקב. You can see it ביעקב. והוא יספר, and Yaakov will tell you, שהגאות של הנילוס היא תוצאה מברכתו. It says, you know why the Nile comes up every day? You know why nature goes up? Because God blessed it. I was there. I am the one that transferred the blessing. So in other words, Yaakov was there to remind the people that nature was God. It wasn't something else. אפילו לאחר מיתת יעקב, and you should know, even after Yaakov passed away, כל man שיוסף חי, as long as Yosef was alive, that Yosef was a continuation of Yaakov, like the verse says, אל תולדות יעקב יוסף, הוא היה שליט על ארץ מצרים, and Yosef was the governor of the land of Egypt. You can still see that Yosef is a continuation of Yaakov, and Yosef is the governor of Egypt. In other words, Yosef is the governor. In other words, there's a Jew that comes from the power of Yaakov that governs Egypt. In other words, God is in charge. You can see that God is in charge. You don't think it's nature. And even גם לאחר מות יוסף, even after Yosef died, you can still say that. כשעדיין חיו חלק מהשבטים, because a few of the brothers were still alive. שהגיעו מארץ ישראל, because they remembered how it was in the land of Israel. They remembered that God is nature, and nature is God. והביאו עמם את תודעה שלמטר השמיים תשתה מים. In other words, there was somebody to talk to who actually believed that nature is God. אזי אפילו שחיו במצרים שבה לא ראו אלוקות. So even though they lived in Egypt, and Egypt is not Israel, you don't put your eyes up to heaven, אלא רק את הטבע, you only see nature, בכל אופן, nevertheless, מכיוון כשהם היו בארץ ישראל, הם ראו איך שעיני השם לוקח בס, they remembered how it used to be in the land of Israel, זה נותן להם את ההבנה, it didn't give them the feeling, but it still gave them the understanding שגם במצרים שבה רואים רק טבע, that even in Egypt that you see only nature, that nature is God. והדרך המבואר במקום אחר בעניין של נס. So now we're going to understand it. What happens when a miracle happens? When a miracle happens, you don't only know about the miracle. When a miracle happens, you realize that nature is also a miracle. That without a miracle. But you need the miracle to happen to recognize. Until now you think birth is birth, it's nothing. When a miracle happens, you realize that everything is God. שהנס מראה לא רק גילוי אלוקות, the miracles not only show you that God can break nature, אלא מלמד שגם הטבע עצמו שייך לקדוש ברוך הוא. It teaches you that nature itself is God. שזהו הפירוש נס. This is what the word miracle in Hebrew means. It uplifts a person. שהוא פועל הרמה והגברה בכל העולם. It uplifts even the world, nature, to recognize that nature is godliness. Page number 8. משום שבאם הנהגת הטבע הייתה שייכת חס ושלום לרשות בפני עצמה, because if nature was not under the control of God, איך יכול הנס להתערב ברשות אחרת, ברשות הטבע? How can God break nature? In other words, nature has to be God. על דרך דברי הגמרא בעניין מחציך ולמעלה, we're going to read the Gemara soon about it, שבאם נאמר שהם שתי רשויות, חס ושלום, כיצד מאפשר לו למים לבוא בארצו? Let's look at the source of the Talmud to see what he's talking about. אמר לו, ההוא כומר פרסי לעמימר. There was one priest, a Persian priest, who come and had a conversation, a theological conversation with a Mimar. Mimar is one of the sages. מחצייך ולמעלה, it says you should know that your top half של הורמיז, that belongs to the god of Hormuz. Why? It's your intellect, it's your eyes, it's your heart, it's your lungs, it's the positive things about the person. Kel Tov, this is a good God. שברא חלקים המעולים והחשובים, the God that created all the elevated parts of the world. ומחצייך בלמטה של ההורמיז. And from your half and down, this is the bad God. This is not the good God who created you, it's the bad God who created you. It says, this is Kelra. It's a bad God. Why? It's all the things that are not good by a person. You know, all the base desires, all the schmutz comes out of you. This is the bad stuff. Yeah? Amar lo, so Amimar told him back. According to you, there are two gods, right? Which they don't get along. Not shutafim. They don't. It's two different gods. This God doesn't like this God, and this God, yeah. Oh, you're actually saying the answer. So two gods mean they don't have the same. This one wants something different than this one. That's what two gods means. Amar lo im ken. So Amimar told the priest, איך מניח לו הקל הרע לקל הטוב? According to you then, I don't understand why the bad God, the lower part God, will let the good God, the upper God, להעביר מים שהוא שותה בארצו, to take the water and came out to his land. It says, obviously there's a connection between the two. Otherwise, the bad God says, keep your own water. I don't need this garbage. I don't need this garbage. The fact that he lets him go through you, in other words, so the person can urinate, שהרי אדם שותה בפיו, because a person drinks with his mouth, שהוא בחלקו העליון, that is in the other part upper part, ומוציא מהרגליים מלמטה, and he urinates from the lower part. Yeah. So in other words, it is one thing. Nature and God are one thing. There's not two things like people seem to think. So let's continue. כל זה היה בחיי יעקב ובניו. All this was in the time of Yaakov and his sons. שאז הייתה לפחות הבנה והשגת באלוקות. It's true that it wasn't as good as in Israel. In Israel, you see God every day. Without God, you don't eat. Every day you need God. You feel it in Israel. In Egypt, it says maybe you didn't feel it, but you understood it in your mind. When Yaakov was there, when the tribes were there, there was somebody there to remind you, hey, we remember the good old days, something to remind you that nature is God. אכן לא הייתה ראייה אלוקות במוחש כמו בארץ ישראל. It wasn't as good as in the land of Israel. אך בכל זאת הייתה הבנה והשגה. But nevertheless you could understand it intellectually. כמו שכתוב, ויחי יעקב בארץ מצרים. It says in Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt. וידועה תורת רבינו הזכיין על הפסוק, שאפילו בארץ מצרים הזה ויחי. That he was able to live with God even in the land of Egypt. It was descent compared to Israel, but it was still okay. It was still alive. Page number 9. So this was the first descent, the descent of the book of Bereshit, the descent of Genesis. But then we have another descent, the descent of the book of Shemot, the descent of the book of Exodus. Ach בפרשת שמות, but in the book of Shemot, and the book of Shemot, when does it relate to us? לאחר פטירת יעקב והשבטים, after Yaakov passed away, after all the tribes passed away, התרחשה ירידה שנייה. Then it was the second descent. האלם וההסתר היה כה גדול. In other words, God was so removed, הייתה אפילו שלא הייתה אפילו סגן. People did not even recognize that nature is God. At least before, they didn't feel it, but they knew it intellectually. Now, they didn't even know it intellectually. Nature is nature. In other words, good is good, good is good. But you know what? In order to earn money, you need to bend corners. That's it. That's a person understood. If I close my business on Yom Kippur and I close my business, I'm not going to make any money. What are you talking about? על תקופה זו נאמר, on this time it says, and this is what it says, ויקם מלך חדש על מצרים. Now we understand the deep thing. A new king arose in Egypt. Until now you knew the king was whom? Hashem. Even nature. Yosef was the king. That it says, a king that forgot all about Yosef. What does it mean forgot all about? Forgot that God is running the show. That's what it means. כאשר היהודי לא ידע את יוסף, when a Jew doesn't know, recognize that God is running nature. Yeah. היינו שכאשר היהודי אינו יודע משנת תמיד המצרים, he doesn't recognize who's the true ruler of Egypt. He doesn't see it. הוא לא יודע שהאלוקית היא בעל הבית על הטבע. He doesn't know that God is the boss of nature. What is it? זה גורם לכך שבלעומת זה ישנו מלך חדש. That is when it says a new king rose on Egypt. A new king that didn't know Yosef. Right? The whole thing is, what does it mean didn't know Yosef? Before, when you knew Yosef, you knew that Yosef through Yaakov is running Egypt. Now, it's just new. There's no Yosef. That's it. It's only nature. There's no connection to God. האלם ומסתר שמעלים ומנגד לגמרי. וזוהי הירידה השנייה. This is the second descent של פרשת שמות, of פרשת שמות, שלא רק שלא הייתה ראייה באלוקות, before at least they recognized, understood in their mind that God is running nature, אלא גם ההשגה באלוקות כבר לא הייתה. They didn't even recognize it. They said, God is running the show. נשארה רק האמונה, והאמונה הביאה את הגאולה. In other words, they didn't have even intellectual thought. They just believed, I don't know, my grandmother told me something that there's a God in nature. no understanding, no nothing, just a little bit of something left. Emunah, yeah. We'll see soon. Good question. He says, what about today? How's it working today? We're going to see soon. He's going to discuss your question right now. על דרך זה יש את אותם שני ירידות בכל אחד ואחד בכל יום. So you're going to see that this one has the two levels we have every day in our life. Every day in our life we have these two levels. בתחילת היום, in the beginning of the day, הדבר הראשון שעל יהודי לעשות, the first thing that a Jew has to do, להתפלל, is to daven to God. כמאמר, שתהא תפילתו סמוכה למיטתו. In other words, as soon as you get up, what do? You pray. לאחר התפילה, עליו ללכת מבית הכנסת לבית המדרש. And after davening, you go to learn Torah after davening. And only after that, you go to your business. So it's 3 stages. You get up, you daven to God, you learn Torah, and then you go to business. And we're going to see these levels right over here, all these levels. Tanya, this is Talmud in source number 7. Tanya, Abba Binyamin used to say, Ha'iti mitzta'er kol yamai al tfilati sheteh samuch lemittati. It says, I made a very deep strain. I pain myself every day to make sure that I daven immediately when I get up. I shouldn't do anything else. I get up, I pray. Samuch lemittati, Rashi says, Kol yamai nizarti shelo asot melacha. My entire life, I was very makpid. I was very careful that I shouldn't do any work, ושלא לעסוק בתורה, not even learn Torah. Before what? כשעמדתי ממתי, when I woke up. עד שאקרא קריאת שמע ואתפלל. Until I read the Shema and I davened. In other words, the first thing you get up is Shema and davening. Then you can only then Torah. Yeah? Don't even do Torah before that. Yeah? And only then walk. And source number 8, we're going to see, the Shulchan Aruch says the same thing. כל איש ישראל חייב בתלמוד תורה. It says every Jewish person needs to learn Torah. בין עני, בין עשיר, whether you're poor, whether you're rich. בין שלם, בין גופו, בין בעל יסתורים, whether you're handicapped, whether you're healthy. ואפילו עני המחזר על הפתחים, even if you're so poor, you don't have anything to eat for today. ואפילו בעל אישה ובנים, and even if it's not just you taking care of you, there's people who rely on you. You still are required. חייב לקבוע לו עת לתלמוד תורה ביום ובלילה. He needs to have time to learn Torah, both during the day and during the night. שנאמר, where do we learn this? It says it in the Torah. והגית בו יומם ולילה. It says you should learn it day and night. ועת זו שביום מצוון המנבחר, and the day part, when is it? לקבע אותה מיד אחר התפילה. In other words, davening first and then that. קודם שילך לעסקיו. So we see, even in the Shulchan Aruch says, you get up, you daven, say Shema, and learn Torah, and then learn. Then go to the business. So let's try to understand these levels that we discussed of before, where they are here. בשעת התפילה, when a person davens, האדם נמצא בתחושה אדומה לארץ ישראל. He is in the land of Israel. Davening is the time of you are in the land of Israel. What do you mean? כשהוא אומר שמע ישראל, when a person says שמע ישראל in davening every day, והרי שמע זה ראשי תיבות, the שמע itself is an acronym for שאו מרום עיניכם. Look with your eyes to the heavens. In other words, the time of davening is you are recognizing that God is the God. God is Him. You're together with God. ולאחר כל ההכנות שאמר לפני קריאת שמע, after all the preparation one thinks before reading of the Shema, אינו צריך הרבה עבודה, אלא מיד כשמקיים, שאו מרום עיניכם. He's already there. He just needs to say Shema and think about, now I need to be thinking about God in the heavens. מסתכל על השמיים, he looks up at the heavens, הוא מיד רואה רוחניות. Immediately he sees that everything comes from God. especially בתפילת 18. Especially in 18 when he asks for sustenance. He knows God is bringing it. Right after Shema is the 18. I'm asking for rain and I'm asking for this. God, you are, the money that I'm making today is all from you. It's recognition. You live in the land of Israel. שאז הוא בביטול במציאות, כעבד בפני ידו, you like a slave in front of your master. כל זה היא מדרגת האדם, כפי שהיא דוגמת ארץ ישראל, למטר השמיים תשתה מים. This is the first level. The level of the Jews, how they were in Egypt. In Israel.
It comes from Hashem.
Everything is God. God is here. אך כאשר הוא מסיים את תפילת 18, but now he finished 18. לאחר התפילה הוא כבר חווה ירידה. At that moment, it's a descent. He says, what do you mean descent? He's going to learn Torah now. Where's the descent? Learning Torah is Torah. אך בירידה ישנם שתי דרגות. He's going to see two levels now. There's going to be one level of learning Torah. That's a descent we're going to see. הדרגה הראשונה בירידה היא כשהוא הולך מבית הכנסת לבית המדרש when he starts learning Torah. Why? Learning Torah, you're still with God. משום שבשעת לימוד התורה אין לו את אותה ראייה שהייתה לו בזמן קריאת שמע ותפילה. Because when he learns Torah, he has understanding of God, not a feeling of God. When he davens to God, he recognizes that God is giving him. When he learns Torah, he is trying to understand where God is in the process. Yeah, he has an understanding that God is there. He doesn't feel it. The feeling, if anything, can only come during davening. Not that it will. That's if you daven properly, obviously. Yeah, but the feeling that God is God and the one gives us sustenance is not in the learning Torah. We learn Torah. I'll ask you a question. We learn Torah every day, right here in the morning. How many times did you have a feeling God is here? You don't. You know, if I ask you, is God here? You tell me, of course. But it's only understanding. It's not feeling. It's only understanding. It's not feeling. אך עדיין יש לו השגה באלוקות. But still, I tell you, this is God's words. I understand that what we're learning now, the Mishnah is God. I understand how important it is. Do I feel it? No, it's not the land of Israel. But I know that nature is God. I know. I don't feel that nature is God. I know that there's God. זוהי הירידה הראשונה. This is the first descent. לאחר מכן, after that, I have a second descent. What's the second descent? בשעה שהוא הולך להשגה, when I go to business, ודרך ארץ, you know what my understanding is? My understanding becomes that if I, cut the corners here and there, not according to Torah, I'm going to make more money. That's my understanding. In other words, I am thinking already that God doesn't exist here. Not even in my understanding God exists. אז מתרחשת הירידה השנייה. We have the second descent. משום שאז לא רק חסרה אצלו הראייה. Not only you're not in the land of Israel, you don't feel God. אלא חסרה, you don't even understand that God is there. You understand that if you cheat, you make money. That's the way you understand it.
Yosef died. You're in Egypt after Yosef died.
That's right. You're in Egypt after Yosef died. הוא יכול לגמרי לשכוח לאלוקות. He can forget about God completely. He doesn't recognize that God is in his work. He thinks it's nature. If I cheat, I make more money. וכפתגם כמו חכמור, שבהמה לה מכירה כלל שישנם בשמיים. In other words, the animal doesn't even recognize the נפש הבהמית, the animal soul, doesn't even recognize that there's God up in the heaven. The נפש הבהמית, why do we call it נפש הבהמית? Just like an animal, like a cow. All the animals that walk on four, where are they looking all the time? They're looking downwards. Only man that walks on two looks up to heavens. And we will call you the animal soul. Why is it called the animal soul? Because it only looks at the earth. It doesn't recognize that there's a God above that's down here. זאת אומרת, שמצד נפש הבהמית, it is because of our animal soul, אפשר לשכוח לגמרי על אלוקות. We can completely forget that God exists. ההיעלם של הטבע הוא אכל כך חזק, הוא כל כך חזק, אני חושב, שאפשר לחשוב שכוחי בעצם ידי עשה לי את החיל הזה. That you can think that as long as you do what nature requires, you're going to get money. וזוהי הרעה מגלות מצרים, ביציאת מצרים בכל יום. This is the message for us. יהודי צריך לדעת, a Jew needs to know. מיד כשהוא מסיים 18, זו כבר ירידה. Immediately after you finish davening to God, you're already descending, you're already going down. אמנם זהו דבר שצריך לעשות. He says, maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should daven all day long. He says, no. God told you to go down to Egypt. אנוס על פי הדיבור. It says, this is what anus al pi dibur means. You don't have a choice to go and daven all day long. God says, I want you to go and learn Torah. And not only that, I want you to go down another level after that even. And this is what's called anus al pi didur. He was forced by God.
Go to Egypt.
Go to Egypt. That's right. God forced us to go to Egypt. This is what it means. לסיים את התפילה ולהמשיך את היום בלימוד התורה. God told you, you can't be with me all day long. I want you to go down and get to the second level. Only recognize that I'm there, intellectually. And then go even a further more down, to a place where you can't even see me. And over there, בעסקים ובדרך ארץ. אך זה צריך להיעשות באופן של אנוס על פי הדיבור. But do it not because you enjoy it. Do it because God forced you into it. If you do it because you enjoy it, you're doing it out of your desires to make money, that's the wrong thing. God told me to make money. That's why you're doing it. Not because I want the money so I can use it for my own whatever it is. כמו יעקב אבינו שהלך למצרים. This is what it means that Yaakov went down to Egypt. Why did he go down to Egypt? רק משום שהקדוש ברוך הוא ציווה עליו לעשות זאת. If God wouldn't have commanded him to do it, he would have never have done it. God forced him there. So God forcing us. We should want all day long to be together with God. Or maybe not even together. Learn Torah. If you can't learn Torah, so at least learn Torah. But God says, no, not even that. After that, I want you to go down to the depths of Egypt. אכן הכוונה העליונה היא שהאדם לא יישאר כל היום בדרגה של 18. God doesn't want a person to be on the level of 18, אלא שילך מבית הכנסת לבית המדרש. He wants you to go down into understanding of Torah. ומבית המדרש להסתקה ולדרך הארץ. And then he wants you to descend even a second time to דרך הארץ. אך בכל זאת ישנה ירידה. You have to remember there's a descent. משום שבשעה שנכנסים לעולם, לא כל אחד יכול לאחוז בדרגה של מתפלל כל היום. And it says, the person who can daven every day, פטור ממצוות. He doesn't need to do anything. But we are not. We have to go down into the world. למרות הירידה, nevertheless, even though we're descending, שלא רק שאין ראייה באלוקות, not only we don't see godliness, אלא חסרה אפילו התודעה שיש אלוקות. We don't even recognize that nature is God. We think that we did it, and if we have the right connections, we're going to make the money. That's what we're going to make the money. בכל זאת, בשעה שישנה אמונה, nevertheless, just like the Jewish people in Egypt, as long as you know that your grandmother told you that you should remember that nature is God, that's even enough. האמונה עצמה מביאה את הגאולה. That belief by itself is going to bring the redemption, because there's going to be a time where you're not going to feel godliness in nature. You're not even going to understand how God is in nature. Just believe it, and that belief is going to take us through. And to answer your question, today we don't have Eretz Israel. We don't have that level of Eretz Israel. The most level you can get to today is to recognize, to understand not with the feelings, with your head, that nature is God. I know, I can understand. The more you will learn, the more you will see how your business, if you keep Torah, will give you more money. Feeling, you will never have. You cannot have. When would you have the feeling? When Mashiach comes. Only then we would have. So we only can go to recognition. We cannot go to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, until Moshe comes. By the way, if you remember my speech on Shabbos, this is what Moshe asked. When Moshe asked, I want you to give them the recognition, God says no. Recognition is only going to come, the feeling is only going to come when Mashiach is going to come. So Moshe told him back, so send Mashiach. And that was the whole conversation between God and Moshe, as it explained.
But before, when they were after in the desert and they were inside, they had a feeling when they daven or no? Or they never had this feeling?
In the Zeu?
In the davening?
Never. In the davening, we
don't have it,
but they would,
previous
yes,
generation.
they would have it. Or also special people. And it's not true that we don't have it. We could have it. If a person, in other words, there will be times in your life where you can get there. I don't say you can get there every time you daven. But it is, even me and you can reach that level in davening today. Yeah, not every day, it needs to be special circumstances, it needs to be, but the fact that we can do it, we can do it.
So, we can't be blissful all day if we have to go in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to Egypt.
That's right.
Didn't I hear you once say that as Jews, we have to escape our own personal Egypts every day?
That's right.
Like, we have to escape our own oppressions and our own depressions.
Very good.
That we put on ourselves, that we self-impose on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start our mourning and the tefillah and the prayer, we break out of Egypt and kind of...
We have a mini land of Israel, that's right.
That's
That's-
symbology there? Okay.
that-
I have one more question.
Sure.
The class topic today, the three generations,
Uh-huh.
is that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? I was trying to figure out your email today.
I don't know why they gave this.
So the thing that said today was the third generation destroys was today's class topic.
Yeah, so we have three generations, let's call it.
Yeah.
The generation of learning Torah, that was Yaakov when he came down to Egypt. The generation, even after Yaakov passed away, that was the second generation. They still didn't remember Eretz Israel.
Jacob is the first generation.
That's right.
Okay, I thought it was Abraham.
The Shvatim, the tribes.
I thought it was referencing Abraham, Yitzhak.
No. It means the tribes.
Okay, so Jacob is the first generation, and then?
After Jacob died, the tribes still recognized it intellectually. Maybe they didn't feel it. And then after all the tribes died, that was the third generation that thought that Egypt, there is no king for Egypt. There's a new king came to Egypt.
Okay.
That was the third generation.
I was trying to figure that out because...
That's nature without God.
That's right. Just nature without God. Like we do today. When we go to each and every one of us, when we go to work, that's the way we are. We need to remind ourselves, hey, God is here. If it's hard to remind, at least believe it. At least have some, if it's hard to see it intellectually, still the belief in it is going to take you out of that. The fact that you know deep inside it must be this way, that's what's going to cause us to do the right thing.